thrilled that you guys are here. Hoping everything's going well. Wanted to say thank you, and welcome to everyone. We're excited to be able to have you here. The audio is on, and thank you, and just welcome everybody from Carthage, Illinois to Arizona. Just want to say thank you and welcome you to, how you doing, Sherry? Great to have you here. We got California. We've got Illinois on. Of course, we're excited. Ron's going to be out in Illinois tonight. Let him know you guys join us tonight. Ron's going to be there live and doing a live unplugged. Very excited about that. Dr. Jen's going to be joining us here in just a second. Home state of Colorado's here. We've got California here. Thank you so much, everybody, for jumping on. We have people joining us on our Facebook family. We got our Zoom family happening, and thrilled to have you all here. Thanks, everyone. How you doing from cold South Carolina today? As I mentioned, Jen's going to join us in just a minute. She was just finishing up with a patient, and thrilled to have you all here. Welcome if this is your first time joining us on a Euphoria Lunchtime Science with Dr. Jen Myers. As I mentioned, we go snip by snip. They're all there under their videos by date and by snip under the Dr. Jen Lunchtime Science. So as I mentioned, Dr. Jen will be jumping on here in just a second. So just want to say hello, give us a shout out, wave to your friends, text them. Seattle's here. How you doing? Hi, everybody. We've got some friends saying hi to us right now. Rochelle, how you doing? Great to have you here. Kyle McGregor's watching. I saw that. Sherry Denny, so glad you're here. How you doing? Gloria, boy, we're excited about tonight and Ron being there with you and Danny and the other local leaders, Tina, etc. Austin, Texas is checking us out today. Fantastic. Carmen's here. Hey, it's chilly in Atlanta. That's what we're hearing right now. And Florida. Yep, I've got snow out in my front yard. What an exciting time. What a diverse, beautiful country we live in. Hey, Linda, how are you doing? We're thrilled to have you guys here. We've got this incredible product, Nutrition. We've got our incredible Dr. Jen Myers here with us right now. And with that, we're just going to make sure I'm going to hide my view here off of the Zoom. And with that, Jen, can you hear us?
I can. Hey, guys. Thanks for
welcome.
Patient. I appreciate it.
So glad you're here. And just for everybody's calendar, mark it right now. She'll be back February 12th. So mark your calendar, February 12th. And with that, we're just going to kick it off. Dr. Jen, we want every minute that you've got. So let's jump into why our nutrition is so cool. What are we talking about today?
Oh, we get to talk about the microbiome, right? So talk about a big, complex system, right? So we consider the microbiome or the gut to be our second brain. And in my opinion, I think it might even be the first brain because it's so complex and so intricate, and there's so many pathways and so many things that are affected by the health of our microbiome and the downward path of what it affects as well, such as our immune system, our neurotransmitters, all kinds of things. We're going to talk about a lot of those things today. Sorry, guys, I have an emergency patient here, so I'm a little bit discombobulated. She's great. We're just going to get her on her way to the ER. So excuse my brain being a little off. So what we get to talk about, though, is FUT2, right? So this gene in SNP, I had a lot of fun, believe it or not, the first time I started dissecting what this variant in this gene did and the different pathways that it influenced. So it's going to seem kind of confusing to you when I talk about microbiome and intestinal health, but yet we're utilizing these ingredients, which we'll go over, such as B12, the 5-methyl-tetrahydrofolate, and SAMe. There's an extremely interesting, I think you guys will find it interesting too, connection here between methylation and the health of the microbiome or the gut. So with that being said, this beautiful gene, this FUT2, is actually, it's an enzyme, right? So it's responsible mainly for the synthesis of particular antigens in our bodily fluids, right? And also happens in the intestinal mucosa. This has a huge, huge, huge influence on our intestinal bacteria, which is our microbiome, and the absorption of different nutrients. And that's where we talk about these different vitamins and minerals and supplements that come into play when it comes to how our bodies absorb and utilize things in correlation with this genetic variant or SNP. Okay, sorry guys, I will get with it, I promise. It's like from 100 miles an hour to 0. So my body's still like, let's go. I might have to get him to do some jumping jacks to see if that helps. So of course, Craig has put together some lovely pictures as always and visuals for you guys based off this. I really hope you guys are ready to dive in and understand some of this complexity of the human intestinal microbiome. Of course, it can get extremely complicated. So follow me closely. I hope I don't lose you. You might have to watch this a few times. Of course, I will always do my best to help you understand it and to help you interpret it in a way that's digestible, and a language that can help everybody understand it a little bit better. So the human intestinal microbiome. So this contributes to so many different biological functions in the body, right? So this is maintenance of the immune homeostasis or balance in the immune system, modulation of intestinal development and things that happen within the intestines, of course, not just nutrient absorption, but also metabolic capabilities and how our metabolic system, our cells function, neurotransmitters, how they're produced, how we digest our food. There's so many different things, good bacteria, bad bacteria. We're going to talk about it all a little bit. Speaking of, aren't those the cutest little bad bacteria you've ever seen, right? They're so cute. Good job, Craig. So this FUT2, of course, you know I like to dive into the SNP a little bit first before we talk about the ingredients. Fucosyl-transferase 2 is the name of it. It's actually responsible for producing these different and specific sugar groups, okay? So these sugar groups are actually secreted by our intestinal cells into our bowels to attract healthy or good bacteria. Okay, so polymorphisms, right, we know what that word is, within this gene actually produce what we call poor secretor status. And I'll talk about what that means. So lack of these particular sugars actually allows for what we call gut dysbiosis, which is a imbalance within the microbiome, right, of good to bad bacteria, as well as inflammation. Could be viruses, candida, could be a few different other things that could cause this gut dysbiosis. Okay, so it also increases our risk for inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, leaky gut, IBS, right? And we know a lot of people who suffer from gastrointestinal disease. So a secretor, what we call a secretor, is actually defined as a person who secretes, okay, follow this, who secretes their blood type antigens into body fluids and secretions like the saliva in our mouth. Digestion first starts there, right? The mucus in our digestive tract, and even kind of some of our respiratory cavities as well as other different mucosal linings in the body. So basically what this means is that a secretor puts their blood type into these body fluids or bodily fluids. Okay, so a non-secretor, and why is this important? We'll talk about that too. A non-secretor, on the other hand, is somebody who actually puts little to no of their blood type into these fluids. Same fluids we're talking about, of course. So as a general rule, right, so the US, I found in statistics that about 20%, right, and this is in the US, of the population are non-secretors, 20%, right, with the remaining 80% being secretors. Okay, so at a very, very, very basic level, this means being able to put your blood type into your saliva and different mucuses in the body allows for what we call an added degree of protection, of course, from the environment, from certain environmental triggers, particularly respect to these microorganisms, right? Fungus, virus, bacteria. So it's a protection mechanism for us. So people who are non-secretors have an issue with being able to protect from certain environmental factors, such as these microorganisms. So they are more susceptible to these gut and gastrointestinal infections and inflammation. That's why this gene is so important, because not only, somebody asked me once, is this a secretor gene? Actually it is. It tells us whether somebody is or is not a healthy secretor. So this gene also produces, right, this certain type of protein, again, that helps us with these certain types of sugars known as fructose into carbohydrates, okay? And then this happens in the mucosal layer of our intestines. So like humans, like us, right, and you know, some of this happens more than it does in others. Bacteria consume sugar. So like us, which I hope you guys aren't eating a lot of sugar, bacteria does consume sugar. It loves sugar. It thrives on sugar. That's why we always say if you have a bacterial overgrowth, decrease your sugar intake, okay? So it actually, sugar, right? The sugar is actually kind of like a buffet for these bacteria, right? So it is good in a sense, this type of sugar, because it helps the microbiome ecosystem, which is a healthy thing. That's what we want. But if there's an imbalance or a shift that happens here, that's when we start to see problems, right? So we want to be able to help our immune response by enabling this good bacteria, this healthy bacteria to colonize instead of the bad bacteria. That's its job. We want better, more good, less bad, of course. So evidence from this actually comes from studies. We've seen studies that show a lack of this FUT2 protein or enzyme, and it's actually associated with particular gastrointestinal infections from these various pathogens. Again, when I say pathogens, I mean fungus, bacteria, and virus. In other words, this gene, having a variation in this gene can increase our risk for bad bacteria. So we'll go in a little bit more, but what does this mean when it comes to our B vitamins, right? Why did we put B12, folate, and SAMe into this product when it came to this SNP? So it's actually been proposed that this genetic variant can actually alter, of course, the composition of our microbiome. Individuals who, again, are these non-secretors and a homozygous, or a red SNP, right? They actually lack these specific functions that are necessary for our healthy gut microbiome. Again, I'm just kind of repeating what I'm saying because it's a pretty intricate process. This, of course, can lead to an increased risk of bacteria imbalance in the gut. And it's related to gastric-induced B12 malabsorption. There we go. So infections that can happen with this gene as well as H. pylori, I don't know if you've ever heard of that, is a bacterial infection in the human intestine, and it's been reported to interfere with the release of what we call intrinsic factor. We know gastric intrinsic factor binds with B12 in the GI system to help with the absorption of it, right? So we can actually inhibit the release of this intrinsic factor to be able to bind with B12 needed for absorption. Therefore, we don't absorb it as well. And this does happen in a methylation process as well. If we have the methylated forms of these things, we need less and less of these different cofactors to help us absorb, which is why we get into this. There's so much information, guys. I love the microbiome. So also kind of just to touch on H. pylori, it is the most successful, this is what they call it, the most successful pathogen in human history. H. pylori. Isn't that crazy? It's been around for over 200,000 years. It's not uncommon for somebody to have this bacteria living inside of them for an entire life and never even know it. Isn't that crazy? So according to the CDC stat that I pulled, they said about 66% of the world's human population is infected with H. pylori. If you have this genetic variant, you actually are a little bit more prone to do so, right? So that can decrease your absorption of particular vitamins and minerals, and also help with the, or not help with the balance of good to bad bacteria. So, in other words, why do we have to take the right form of B12 and folate in order to help our microbiome, right? So let's talk about what that means. So having this FU2T gene is associated, of course, not only with the change in the microbiome and the bacteria shift from good to bad, but also having a decreased level of B12 in the blood, okay? So that's what we're gonna talk about and why we're adding these methylcobalamin B12 in here. So by definition, of course, vitamins, especially B12, are nutrients that are vital to our health, but cannot be synthesized by our body. B12 is one of them, right? Because we can't produce them, we need to get them in our diet. B12 is one of those big ones that we do have to get in our diet. We cannot get them in plant form. We do have to get them from animal sources. There are some, but they are not in the correct form most of the time. And even if we're eating the animal product, it doesn't mean that we're getting the methylated form or we're getting it absorbed and bypassing all these crazy and intricate processes to be able to get it into the cells where it belongs from the small intestine of the microbiome. And if our microbiome is unhealthy, it makes that even more difficult, which is insane. B12 is involved in so many different processes: self-synthesis development, maintenance of the nervous system, DNA synthesis. There's a lot of different things besides energy that B12 does for us. So FUT2 is kind of one of those indirect players within all the processes that happen for B12 to be able to do its job efficiently. So the interesting part about B12 is it is actually synthesized by bacteria. Bacteria does a lot for us. We need good bacteria. And if we don't have enough good bacteria, we actually don't get to use these vital nutrients like B12 and folate as efficiently as we should to maintain this healthy microbiome and have this increased level of these healthy nutrients to get into the cells where they belong so they can start all the biological and biochemical processes that we need to do on a daily basis. So what we want to make sure is that we get the methylated or methylcobalamin form into our body so it increases our risk for what we call, or I like to call, metabolic flexibility. And that will be helpful with our absorption and our cellular processes. It's a really elegant and intricate biological process that us human beings are. Interesting fun fact that I actually found, because I love doing research and finding fun facts for you guys just to lighten it up a little bit, is that algae, right? So most plants, of course, as we know, neither produce nor require B12, okay? But nearly half of our algae actually requires this vitamin. So algae requires B12. Algae is a microbiome, which is a bacteria, of course. So you can actually see there's a natural correlation here between algae being a bacteria and it needing B12. That just goes to show how important bacteria and good bacteria is for the absorption of these essential nutrients. So I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. It's actually used as a cofactor. Bacteria is used as a cofactor for B12 absorption. So biology fun fact for the day. I don't know, I like to add these little things in just to keep it somewhat interesting because this can get so heavy. We noted in research, I look back, it was 2007 to 2012. We confirmed through observation that B12 methylation from inactive to active, right? So taking cobalamin or hydroxycobalamin and getting into the active form of methylcobalamin actually allows the gut microbiome to maintain a stable B12 composition or level, right? So it's needed, the methylated forms of these things, to help balance out a healthy B12 level in the blood. Keeps it robust, which we need a robust amount of this nutrient for every cellular process that we do. And of course, supplementation with the biological active B12 or methylcobalamin is vital and important. In other words, we need healthy gut bacteria and we need the methylated form of B12 with this genetic variant. Folate, let's get into folate. I know I have so much to say. Poor Craig, I don't know how he keeps up with me. Folate is required. Of course, we know it's required for DNA synthesis and epigenetic regulation even. It's required for a lot of different things in the body. So in addition to just being a dietary nutrient, the gut microbiome has actually been recognized as a source of B complex vitamins, including folate, which is awesome to know. So folate biosynthesis requires actually this extremely intricate and complex, and I'm going to use that word a lot when it comes to the microbiome, those two words, pathway involving 16 enzymatic processes. It takes 16 enzymes to actually synthesize folate in the microbiome, which is crazy. So folate is actually essential, as we know, for several different metabolic processes, including what we call a one carbon transfer. Methylation metabolism, of course, through the process of, we're going to talk about SAM or SAMe, right? You'll see the connection here. Folate is needed for SAM or SAMe, which is why it's in this as well. Craig, I'm so sorry, I'm going to keep you going back and forth. So folate plays this essential role by actually regulating methylation, homocysteine levels to methionine, which is needed for SAMe pathway as well. And also kind of just, I don't know, putting cellular energy into the cell. We know that B vitamins are super important. Most people, kind of associate it to energy. We got to associate it to cellular energy, especially in the microbiome, because it can help with all those neurotransmitter production and all these different things that our body needs to function on a daily basis, right? Enzymes, right, that can actually be depleted in the microbiome, so we can have problems where we have a bank of enzymes, and once we keep withdrawing, and if we don't deposit these back in, it can deplete it and actually cause a problem with the methylation process. our gut controls a lot, right? It's in crazy, crazy, crazy. So these enzymes are actually cofactors, and they also help with the vitamin metabolism of B12 and folate. I know I told you it's going to get deep. There's so much deep. So once our folate is actually absorbed, it also participates in particular synthesis, like nucleotide synthesis, replication, repair, and methylation of DNA. Once it's absorbed in the small, it's actually absorbed in the colon. Folate is. B12 is in the small intestine. There's different areas in the gut where these things are absorbed, right? Not everything is absorbed in the same place, which also makes it a very intricate process and very, 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 very complicated. So we actually need specific folate secreting intestinal bacterial strands. I don't want to say that too quick. In order for this process of methylation to happen, if we take the folic acid, it's not, especially with this gene, it's gonna hinder so much of how our body absorbs and converts it into folate, which is what is used by the body. We have to use the active form, 5-methytetrahydrofolate, of course, for proper absorption. Just imagine if your microbiome or your gut is unhealthy, right? And most patients I see do have some sort of GI inflammatory response, some sort of shift in their microbiome balance, from antibiotic use or overuse of antibiotics, poor diet and lifestyle, stress. There's a lot of cofactors with this. And if they're trying to eat folic acid rich foods or trying to take folic acid and their guts off, there's no way they're going to be able to start this methylation process to support our other SNP like MTHFR, right? So it is important that we maintain healthy microbiome and use the correct form of these B vitamins, so that way we can get them into the cells so they can do their proper job, so they can bind with this bacteria that's a cofactor and keep us super, super, super healthy. So in other words, the Human Microbiome Project, I have to look at this number, I'm so sorry guys. The Human Microbiome Project actually identified 512 gastrointestinal folate biosynthesis genes. 512 genes in the microbiome that help with folate biosynthesis. That's incredible, right? So that's a massive amount, and they all interact with the methylation pathway. So there's, as we know, there's 7 steps to create this 5-methytetrahydrofolate, which is what we use in the product, and all of them require a bacteria cofactor, every single one of them. So maintaining healthy gut microbiome is extremely important, and extremely important for us to use the active form of folate, which we use in this product as well, even in microdoses, just to help ensure this increased absorption. B12 and folate are not the heavy hitters in this gene. It's actually SAMe, which I'm going to get into right now because I want to make sure I talk enough about it. So we know that B12, methylcobalamin, methytetrahydrofolate are necessary to help the gut absorb and use these nutrients the way that they're supposed to. When they're taken together with this SNP, right, with this FUT2 genetic variant, the imbalance of the microbiome can actually help support our methylation pathway and help us produce enough SAMe, which we're going to talk about right now, which Craig put up for me. And if it's not done properly, it can alter our methylation status of our DNA. That's crazy. That's all in the gut. All in the gut. Anyway, SAMe. So SAMe is a big one. I'm sure you all have heard of it for depression and anxiety. There is a link to why that happens. Our gut produces neurotransmitters. If we have poor neurotransmitter production, then yes, it can lead to anxiety and depression. So they do use SAMe to help with that. So it is the methylated form, SAMe is, of the S-adenosyl methionine. Can't say that one fast today, which is involved in a bunch of different vital processes, especially a big one called methylation, right? It supports a number of biological processes and reactions that actually take place in our bodies on a daily basis. It's involved in things like gene expression, repair of DNA, maintaining cell membrane fluidity, right, or fluid, to also synthesize proteins and neurotransmitters, like I was saying before, and metabolize things like fats and minerals. It does a lot of stuff, this SAMe, right? So in fact, they actually found in a recently published, sorry guys, the Journal of Psychiatric and Neuroscience, I couldn't remember exactly which journal it was, that actually mentioned that over 35 methylation reactions involve SAMe. It's a lot. So how does this even relate to the FUT2 variant? As we've identified, bacteria, of course, causes damage in DNA methylation patterns, bad bacteria, overgrowth of bad bacteria, and it kind of does this whole epigenetic process where it actually takes things like folate, butyrate, acetate, all these things that are necessary to maintain a healthy gut microbiome and inhibits their proper function, right? So, and these are essential and actually vital for DNA methylation, which is what SAMe, folate, and B12 do for our bodies, right? So if you, folate, right, just a little example, right, is actually produced in the body or it's helped to be absorbed by a particular type of bacteria. I believe it's bifidobacterium, don't quote me on that, but I think so. And it's actually a methyl donor that's actually necessary to generate more SAM and SAMe in the body to help with methylation. So good bacteria is extremely important, and that's why we talk about B vitamins and bacteria so much with this gene and the microbiome. We got to have a healthy microbiome to be able to absorb and use these essential vitamins and minerals to help with methylation, to help with cellular energy, to help with biological processes, to keep my brain doing what it's doing right now, which I don't know how we're doing it today, but we sure are. So these are huge and big, strong correlation noted in research with actually how much the appropriate amounts, sorry guys, of SAMe for somebody who has the FUT SNP, and can actually, if you don't take the correct form or amount, it can actually increase those pathogenic or those bad bacterias and trigger things like H. pylori, there's that connection again, and decrease the immune system's function to be able to attack and take care of these bad bacteria, which then can cause gastrointestinal inflammation and possible GI disease. So you can see there's just such a huge correlation between all the processes in our body. Our gut's not just our gut. Our gut is so related to all these different biological processes and nutrients that if we don't take them in the right form and the right amount, and we don't understand because we don't know our genetic predispositions, we aren't really helping ourselves too much, are we? So making sure that we take the correct form and the correct amount if we have this genetic SNP or variant is vital, because then we can help maintain a healthy microgut biome, decrease the risk for H. pylori for somebody who has this variant, decrease the risk for gastrointestinal inflammation and disease, and help create a healthier, there's other contributing factors as always, a healthier microbiome. You conjunction that in with not taking an overuse of antibiotics, using a good and healthy, strong pre and probiotic, making sure, thank you, perfect, making sure that we are getting those neurotransmitters so we don't have to, at least not on that aspect, have to deal with anxiety or depression as much. If our gut's healthy, our brain's usually much healthier. Usually if somebody comes in with brain fog, we have to address the gut and the methylation pathway quite a bit to help and support them. And that's a huge problem that we see, and you all know that. I'm sure you hear it all the time if you don't experience it yourself. Mood and GI problems are probably, and fatigue, which all can come from all of this, right, are three of kind of the biggest things that we hear. And it can all be affected by this crazy little SNP that has so many different influences from all these different biological processes. So without kind of digging deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole of science of the microbiome, there's a lot of healthy supporting evidence showing that this FUT2 SNP in combination with methylcobalamin, which is your active form of B12, quatropholate or your 5-methotetrahydrofolate, same thing, and the active form of SAMe will actually help support these different and important biological processes within the human intestinal microbiome. So if the gut microbiome is imbalanced or not working the way that it's supposed to, if there's a shift in the homeostasis of good to bad bacteria or a methylation process, our methylation process will be hindered. So if our gut's not healthy, our brain's not healthy, neurotransmitters aren't as productive and as healthy, and our methylation process of getting that cellular energy into the cell so we can start and do talking, thinking, moving, all these different things that we need to do on a daily basis. Healthy gut, healthy you, absolutely. Understanding this genetic variant can increase our risk for certain bacterial imbalances and decrease our absorption of certain nutrients, including this methylation process, which does work on DNA. It's great for us to know, great for us to have the power to understand it now, and great for even better, that we can do something about it. If you would have said 10 years ago to me, methylation is affected by your gut microbiome, I would have been like, I don't know, I think it's all not related to that. But now we see there's such a huge correlation, holistic body approach, that everything is so interconnected. There's such an elegance, and that's what we get to do here. And I know I get super pumped up and passionate when I talk about it, but I don't know anyone else that gets to do this. And so what we're doing here is an amazing thing. Obviously, we want to help support a healthy microbiome, fermented foods, pre and probiotic, enzymes, all this stuff is kind of in your product as well, which is even cooler as part of the base. Avoiding the use of overuse of antibiotics if we don't have to, decreasing stress, exercise, not eating crappy foods, that will all help the health of our microbiome, the absorption of these nutrients, and our methylation process, which is so very important to everything that we do on a daily basis. With that said, next week, GSTP1, which is a detoxin genetic variant that I really like to talk about as well. There's a lot of other little pieces to all this one, so we're going to keep going. As always, be a powerhouse, kick more ass, take your nutrition, have healthy microbiome, have cellular energy and great methylation. Craig, you're a rock star for keeping up with me. Everybody, I'm so sorry about my distraction, but my patient is just fine. We do have to send her to the ER, but she is doing quite well.
Jen, thank you so much. What a blast. Holy fire hose, Batman. Man, I need some methylation, niner, gut biome, all of the above help. So thank you so very much. We're going to see you back on February 12th, Jen.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Sorry, it's an intricate system. I love it, but it's detailed, man. So
have a fantastic day, everyone. See you later. Go check out the replay on our Facebook under videos, Dr. Jen Lunchtime Science. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.